We're back, boys! Now, I am ever so sorry to leave you a couple of weeks without any brand new Rock Cycle videos. I am sure your days have been ruined and you've just been crying your heart out. But alas, it turns out uni did actually want me to do a bit of uni work. Turns out my thinking of there aren't real lectures, can't be real exams was not correct. But anyway, at least the majority of that is out the way now, so we can go back to these ever so high quality videos I'm sure you know and love. I wanted to get some champagne to celebrate this occasion, but with my current budget, Tesco's own brand cider is all I can afford. But what better way to come back than looking at one of my most anticipated albums of this year, and that is Boston Manor's brand new album, Glue. So let's get into it. Well, the build up for this album really was a bit of a roller coaster with a lot of highs and a lot of lows. Started out with The Liquid being released last summer, I think it was. At that time we didn't know it was a new single off an album. I just thought it was a bit of a random song for a bit of fun, and I was all there for that. I really enjoyed it. But that was an instant banger, very well received, and if you ever get the chance to go see it live, I highly recommend it because that song is one of the highlights of the set list. But then things started going not quite as well when we got the first single that was the first official single from this album, which was Everything Is Ordinary, and that's when people started getting a bit confused and a bit scared, because that really ended up being quite a polarising track. But anyway, everyone's patience really paid off in the end, because the end result is an album that many people are already calling the potential album of the year. I don't know if I'd personally say this is definitely the album of the year just yet, but I do think it is a strong contender. So yeah, this is a great album. I just think the band had a few weak and strange choices for singles. So perhaps if you only heard a couple of the singles but haven't listened through the full album, I highly recommend you go check that out, maybe if you were a bit disappointed with them. So I was very curious to see where this album is going to go for Boston Manor, because we did see quite a big change up between their first two albums. And in my opinion, this album is a bit of a combination of the two. We have those sort of post-punk elements and pop-punk elements from Be Nothing, and the more sort of post-hardcore elements from Welcome to the Neighbourhood. So we still have this wildness, this chaotic aggression and the real spirit of this punk music from their first album. But it's really found its perfect marriage here, combining those sounds with their second album. With those more structured post-hardcore songs, giving us energy-inducing bridges, really strong, slick guitar riffs, and generally cleaner and smoother singing. I do think singing is one of the strong points on this album. Henry Cox has really come on into his own with this. He's demonstrating a lot more of his clean, straight-up singing ability, which there wasn't as much of in their early music. And overall, this is a really strong album. It doesn't really feel like there's any filler songs on it. I know I've already said that people weren't as keen on Everything's Ordinary, but even if, like me, maybe you weren't as keen on that one, you can see that song was trying to achieve something. It had a purpose, and you can see why the band do that, and you have to commend them for putting in effort and trying something new. So yeah, maybe the end result wasn't amazing, but the song had a meaning, and that justifies it being on an album. Here again we see, like their past music, their songs really have a spirit of their own, and somehow these songs all sort of have their own personalities in a way. I think that's partly due to the themings around this album. A lot of the songs on this album really explore social issues and modern society and all the problems that we're currently listening to. Now, Boston Manor have really done this in the past, but I think here they've done it most on the nose and obviously. The social issues and the themes of the songs, most notably male suicide, which is brought up a few times in this album, along with toxic masculinity, are really the front and centre of this album. And I do think it's done very well. It brings attention to these issues and it gives them something to talk about, and it gives the song a purpose and a meaning, which is something I always really love. But I think they managed to very cleverly do it in a way that hasn't come across as preachy or pretentious. Now, I always really like political and social music. I think it's very important, but I do see why people don't like it. People don't really want to listen to artists lecturing them about things and sort of trying to talk down to them and explain his issues. Henry Cox, with his lyrics on this album, is really coming in it from an average person's point of view. He's asking a lot of questions and he's not really exactly giving the answers. He's just sort of opening the discussion. So overall, I think it does work really well on this album. To give you sort of political music, but not overly political music. But at some points I think this does lead to it being a bit surface level and they don't really dive into these things. I do think that was their point. I don't think these were meant to be masterclass political lectures from experts. But sometimes I feel like I wish they'd given it a bit more substance and gone into these topics a bit deep. So anyway, let's go on to some of the most notable songs from the album. Plasticine Dreams was quite an interesting one. It wasn't really something that I was expecting to hear from Boston Manor, but I did really enjoy it nonetheless. It kind of almost felt like a Boston Manor cover of a classic 90s British Britpop song. So yeah, while it does really feel like a classic Britpop style song, you can definitely tell there's a bit of a Boston Manor twist on it. Everything is Ordinary is a song from the album which, well, I've already talked about on here, but has got a lot of people talking. It's got these really strong, menacing synths and its electronic experimentation, which I do think they combine quite well with their classic Boston Manor sound. And I am quite a fan of this sort of new wave we've been getting over the past 3 or 4 years of combining electronic music with rock music. I think when it's done well, it can be done very well. I think here it's done pretty well, but I know some people really aren't a fan of that trend, so I'm sure people like that just aren't going to be keen on this song. So while I do like the music of this song, the vocals is where it loses me a bit. They're definitely overly distorted. Now I get that's the effect that the band is going for, but I think it just takes away from this song more than it adds to it, because Henry Cox does have a great voice. A lot of the other strong points of this album is how powerful, how emotive his voice is. You can really tell the feelings and the aggression coming through his voice when you're listening on your headphones, and I do think that is a bit lost here when it's sort of distorted and you can't really make it out, unfortunately. Stuck in the Mud is another one, very different from the classic Boston Manor that I know, but I do also really enjoy. It is kind of, I guess, the mandatory slow song you have to have on a heavy album, but I mean, there's a reason for them, because sometimes these heavy bands do slow, soft songs amazingly, and the contrast can work really well. And this song is depressingly beautiful, and in a way I do almost feel bad because I enjoy it so much when the whole song's sort of about isolation and depression and all those issues. You feel a bit bad when you're listening to it and you're like bobbing your head, having fun, even though this isn't really a bobbing your head energy one, this is a slow, depressing one. But when you're listening through the album and that song's got you feeling all down and gloomy, up next comes Monolith to really bring the energy back up to 100. This song is out and out ruthlessness, and it is the perfect rebellious anthem. I'm sure this came out a few years ago, back when I was in my angsty teenager phase, which maybe I haven't completely left, to be honest, but back when I was fully in that phase, that would have been my rebel anthem, I'm sure. It's full of this contagious energy and aggression, and a surprisingly catchy chorus that you really do find yourself singing along to. And it all really builds up to this surprise, sombre, emotional piano ending, which is a bit of an odd fit on the song, but I do think it works. It is quite strong, it's very emotional, it's not what you'd naturally think is about to come next, but it does work in its own way. So overall, I really did love this album. I've been loving Boston Manor since I first saw them back in like 2016, where I had no idea who they were, and they were on the Kerrang tour, I think. And since then I have consistently been saying to my friends, trying to drag them to their live shows and saying this is one of the most underrated British bands going right now. And I think this album really does prove it. Yeah, it's not quite a perfect album, but I think on the whole this is a really great album. So that's why I'm giving it the official Rock Cycle rating of 4 stars out of 5. Really good, really solid album. Not quite perfect, a few things I would tweak, but I think it is definitely enjoyable, to say the least. As always, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and feelings on the album, so let me know down in the comments. And hey, if you want to like and subscribe as well, that'd be great, it'd be really appreciated. As always, really hope you have enjoyed watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.